What's up, you guys? This is Devin from CenturyFX Studios, back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Sony A7RII. This is the big 40 plus megapixel beast from Sony. This is not the A7RIII, the most recent version of this line, but it is very close and it gave me some great results. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on my Canon adapted experience because I was using my Canon lenses and it's adapted, and that's very important for you to know before you get into this. But here I'm going to have the pictures that I took with the camera on screen. And let's start off first with the menu system. But little disclaimer, I am not sponsored by Canon or Sony or any other camera company for that matter. I'm just giving my unbiased or my own opinions kind of thing. Here we go. The menu system is one of the worst in the camera industry. You have to understand that the menu system is one of the worst that I've ever experienced in a camera because you have a lot of sub-menus. I know a whole bunch of new cameras have a lot of sub-menus. Canons do, Nikons do, or whatever. But you have to really dig deep and find out what these things mean. I call myself looking up on Google all these specific terminologies after using cameras for 11 years, trying to figure out what Sony means. And you have to really think about it because Sony is different from Canon in the fact that they give you a whole bunch of features. Autofocus assist, autofocus peaking, and you got zebras and all these other things that combine to help you get your image that you want, but the way they word it in their camera system is really weird. For example, the autofocus assist lamp. I'm used to it being called the autofocus assist lamp, beam, anything like that, but they call it autofocus illumination, such and such and such. Well, with you having so many different autofocus modes and selections that you can do with this camera, the last thing I want is for you to have a term that also applies to autofocus but has this long-winded phrase going on. Now, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be intelligent and show off your vocabulary when you can, but I don't think the camera menu system is where to do that, because not only is the camera screen small when you're looking at it in comparison to the words, but you're there to take the moment. You're there to capture the moment. So if you're sitting there trying to capture the moment and you have to read these long words, especially if it's your first go around with the camera, then it's not something that you really want to get into. I mean, it's going to provide you a good result, but if I'm in a dark situation, I'm always using the autofocus assist beam. Some people might get annoyed by that if I'm in a theater-like situation like I was. So trying to find that in the menu system, because autofocus assist lamp is not something that you toggle on and off like that. But in this situation, I was actually trying to do that. Now, it's not something that you read in the menu all the time. It's not like I go and, oh, I need to, right before I change my ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, I need to change my autofocus assist lamp. That's not what I think about. But if it's on your camera and you're in a specific situation where you need to change it, it becomes very cumbersome. But that's not the only thing that the menu system does. That's just my main example. It was also with the monitor, the actual viewfinder monitor and the eyepiece, switching between those two, and whether my nose, you know how your nose is sensed or your face is sensed by the time you touch your face on the camera, all the screen that you need comes up, but the screen that you want may or may not come up when you want it to, and it'll go away when you want it to. Toggling between the eyepiece screen and the monitor screen was the worst, especially in an extremely dark situation. So if the menu system was a little bit more streamlined, it would help. But they do give you a lot of functionality buttons, and they try to balance it out. It's not like Sony is unaware of what they're doing or act like they're unaware of what they're doing. Canon does that to you. Like, they act like, oh, we don't know that you need focus peaking or you know, any kind of manual assist for your focus. Anyway, the responsiveness is extremely good on this camera. I love how responsive. It might be actually too responsive. Every time I would touch something would activate. Every time I would do something would activate. And it almost, especially when you look at the mode, when you have all the balancer, the electro, I guess the visual balancer on the screen, and you have all the displays and all your actual quantitative data on the back of the screen, it looks like a fighter jet. It's really cool. It makes you feel like you're some kind of serious airplane pilot or something like that. But when you look into the camera and you see how responsive and all the things that you can control, it makes you feel like you're a professional photographer, and it makes you feel like you have a tool that's working for you. That's the main reason why I love the responsiveness. But the fact that this has an adapted lens, it really does not actually get focus. Even though it's responsive and it thinks it has focus and it'll give you that green box, it's dead out of focus. It might even be back focused and it'll stop focusing even though you have that button halfway down. Now, some of the things you need to understand about the responsiveness is that, of course, it's not an adapted lens, so you can't really give it a demerit for this or any kind of thumbs down for this, because it's not the lens that was designed for the camera. So you can imagine what kind of information it's sending in that brief moment in time when you're trying to take the picture. So I'm not going to give it too many demerits on that, because you have to understand that it also has so many different focus modes, and focus modes where you can override the focus and try to dial in your manual focus, on top of the fact that it has focus peaking, so you can override anything the camera might get wrong, but you're still there to capture the moment. And if you're in a sports or high speed situation or a high action situation, you probably lost that shot if you can't manual focus in time. Now, I've been getting better on my manual focus only because I've been using the Sony, and it's been helping me with the focus peaking, and I love the highlighted highlights around the subject, and it really helps. But it's hard for anybody to be fast enough in some situations, especially over 1/500th of a second, to actually nail focus exactly the way you want to. Now, the modes for AF, like I said before, it really helps. I really love it. Even if I can't get the camera in focus, that's something I love. Now, let's go to silent mode. I love silent mode because unlike Canon and Nikon cameras, the silent is really silent. But that could be a hindrance to whatever situation you're in. You might be saying, well, why do you think that? Well, models, if you're taking pictures of portraits and models and people, well, people are used to hearing that camera click. The camera click is so prevalent in our minds, I think subconsciously, that they decided to put that as a digital feature for some of the all digital cameras back in the point and shoot days. They would actually have the shutter click sound as a sound. There was no big mirror to slap up and down, but everybody's so used to hearing that mirror sound, that slapping of the mirror sound. Think of any press conference that President Donald Trump goes to, or any big political figure goes to. Think about how many times you hear that camera click, or paparazzi, Kim Kardashian, the Cardi B, the Kanye West, to anybody who's popular in the news. You will hear that big shutter clicking sound, and everybody's so used to it that they know that something has been captured, something has been done for them to change to the next pose, do whatever they want to do. And the same thing goes with the flash. Anytime you see the flash, you know, oh, I'm done. The picture's done, the exposure's done, so on and so forth. But if you have it on silent mode, it's really like, did you even do anything? But with Canon cameras, even silent mode is not silent. Now, maybe for the EOS R, but I haven't had my hands on that before. As far as using it, I've actually touched it though. The APS-C crop mode. Oh, this is amazing. I was using the Canon 70-200 Mark I on the adapted lens for the A7RII, and it was amazing. I love being able to crop in at 2.8 at 200 millimeters and still get a little bit more lens out of my lens. It's almost having like a lens extender, essentially. That's essentially what you're doing, because you're cropping from 1x crop to a 1.5x crop, which is really nice. You can actually get more value out of your lenses. Not only can you get your value out of your lenses doing the manual focus assist, but you can also get value out of your lenses doing that APS-C automatic crop. And all you gotta do is go to the menu and go through the dreaded menu and click the button, and you're good. Matter of fact, if I had a button because I was trying to get the APS-C crop mode as a function button, and if I could get that as a function button, I could just click it and it'll zoom in and allow me to get the picture without having me to go through these dreaded modes to fix it. Now, one thing that I noticed about the dreaded mode is that if you go through the menu system and you highlight something and then you take a picture, if you go back to the menu system, it stays on what you highlighted. So it was easier for me to go back to the menu system and get to my APS-C mode, but a lot of times I would rather it be a button so I can stay concentrated on the camera. Now, mind you, if you hit the menu button and you're looking through the eyepiece, that menu will come up on the eyepiece, but it also obstructs what you're trying to see. So with all being said, you kind of have to assume when you're going to need it before you need it without losing the shot, because I do a lot of high-speed action and capturing in the moment. I don't have time to really be thinking about all these logistical things that Sony kind of made me go through with this camera. That doesn't mean that I don't love the product that it gave me, and that doesn't mean that it's not a great camera for some people. Now, with the manual focus, I love the manual focus because you have the manual focus assist. I cannot say enough about that. In the focus peaking, you have so many things that will help you. It zooms in when I started to touch the manual focus ring. It knows when I'm touching the manual focus ring. It's like, oh, I know you need to be in the ballpark. At least it'll keep me in the ballpark. So if I'm shooting at like f8 or f11 or something like that, it really helps out. Now, when I'm shooting portraits, I really got to stay still and stuff like that, especially when it zooms in digitally, so it'll help me assist my focus. But it is not all that easy to do portraits. As you can see, it's really hard to lock focus on some of these portraits that I was taking. Now, the battery is horrible. Even with the battery pack that they give you with the camera, for the camera, it is horrible. So I found a workaround. You can actually use I think Anker makes the best battery packs that you can charge your cell phone with. You can get an adapter for the battery. You can get a dummy battery, run it out of the A7RII into one of those cell phone charging battery packs, and that made the camera run pretty much forever. I didn't actually need to charge it after I was using it at maybe 4 hours, maybe even close to 8 hours, or let's say 6 hours. I'm not going to over exaggerate. About 5.5 hours, 6 hours that I was using this camera, and I didn't really need to charge it. I didn't. But one thing about using that dummy battery with the battery pack that you use for cell phones wirelessly is that it has a hard time metering how much life it has left. So, or sometimes it'll give you an X and it'll think it's dead when it's not dead. You just crank it back up. But that only happened to me once or twice. I've never had it to overheat. A lot of people were complaining about overheating. Never had to overheat. I don't know what that's about. I didn't take a lot of video. For the video that I did take, if I was only filming in a cold situation, it was dark. It was in the evening outside, and I shot for about 10 minutes, about 30 minutes. So it wasn't all that bad. I've never had the light come on. I don't know what people are talking about, if they're talking about this camera with Sony's and overheating. I did switch between compressed and uncompressed RAW, but it is great to have compressed RAW or lossless RAW. I think whatever it was on the camera. I don't have it here to reference, but it's good to have that secondary RAW mode because you can shoot more pictures. You also don't have to wait for the buffer. And as a matter of fact, speaking of the buffer was actually good for 40 plus RAW files, 40 plus megapixel RAW files. It was a great buffer, especially using the electronic shutter in silent mode. You could do a lot with the buffer. You could actually make it work for you a little bit faster than the regular mechanical shutter. Since the mirrorless cameras have to flap that mirror up and down, it doesn't have the ease of chopping up that second. When you're using an electronic shutter, you can chop the second a lot finer than a mirrored camera like a DSLR does, because the DSLR has a certain amount or rate that it has to go at, but it can the mirrorless camera with the electronic shutter can minimize that rate really quickly. But at the same time, there's some drawbacks to using the electronic shutter. Like, you can't use the electronic shutter with a strobing system, let alone high-speed sync and all this other stuff. So you have to watch out, and you have to use the mirror when you need to, and when you don't need to use the mirrorless shutter, when you don't need to use it, you can use the electronic shutter. But there's a whole bunch of things that you have to worry about when it comes to using a mirrorless camera. You can't just seamlessly go through a mirrorless, from DSLR to mirrorless, and think everything's going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. And the last thing I want to talk about is ergonomics. You don't have a pinky space on this camera. You can't put your pinky on it. Now, I've used the daggone battery pack, but the battery pack still really doesn't give you a lot of pinky space. It really is easy to drop this camera, especially with the lens like a 70-200 on there, because the 70-200 is it's a lot more heavier than the A7R. It's so much more heavier, and so when you're holding it and stuff like that, or you're in a high speed situation, or you're in a football field, if you don't have a monopod or a tripod, it's super extremely easy to drop this, especially if you have big fingers and big hands like I do. And then if you're a guy, typically guys have bigger and brolier hands than females, so you know, guys are usually the ones who's shooting these cameras, and you know that. But other than that, this is what I feel about the A7R II, guys. The A7R II adapted. It gave me some great images, I think, but focus was hard. Getting through the menus was hard. And one more thing that was hard about this thing is when you're in a really, really low light situation, you have to understand that eyepiece viewfinder is backlit. Also, of course the regular LCD screen on the bottom is backlit. It's going to have a heavy amount of light flooding your eyes at any given time. So if you're in a theater, if you're in a low light situation and you are looking through that eyepiece, you're getting more light than the actual situation has into that eyepiece because it's backlit. Now think about a theater situation or a concert or something like that. The concert is blaring with all types of light. That LCD screen on the inside of the eyepiece especially is supposed to adapt to how much light is coming into it. And so it's doing so many different jobs that it doesn't understand sometimes when you have a backlit situation and a whole bunch of the scene is dark. If the whole bunch of the scene is dark, it's just going to average it and say, just like auto exposure, it's going to average it and say, oh, well, you know, it's like a matrix meter in there. It's going to say, oh, he's not going to need that much light, or he's going to need a whole bunch of light because it's dark in there. That eyepiece viewfinder thing burned my eyes out. It's like watching a movie for 4 hours straight, however long you're at that event and doing what you're trying to do. So you need to watch your eyes when you're using any kind of mirrorless camera. I'd rather use the optical viewfinder because it doesn't burn my eyes out, because with with so much light coming into your eye, it really, really affects your ability to take the picture if you don't know if you're in focus or not. So those are some of the things to watch out for, guys. Stay tuned. This is just a voiceover, but these are my pictures. This is a wonderful model, Anitha, and these are some pictures that I took at some events, but in the theater. So thanks for watching my video, guys. Keep clicking your cameras.